Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on April 9th, 2023 at approximately 7:20 p.m. PST. Now, I've returned to this world for one primary purpose, and that is to remind people that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. I build myself as a spiritual guide because the tools I offer are the tools that I personally work with in my day-to-day life. And the philosophies of life I talk about are the ones I personally live by. Now, today is literally a live reading. As we've gotten in the habit of doing on Sunday nights, we are reading out of different books that I've actually personally written. Now, the reason for this is twofold. One, I am striving to get my own public speaking a little bit better off, a little more smooth. We'll try that word. A little smoother. So I figure why not start with something I've actually written. Now, before I get into it, the last month I was reading this one, which is The Birth of the Wolf Pack. Now, The Birth of the Wolf Pack, where it ends, I only read the first three or four chapters of it. Where The Birth of the Wolf Pack ends is exactly where this new book, well, not exactly new, but where this one comes out. Now, that's the end of an epoch, and it picks up literally where The Birth of the Wolf Pack ends. To this end, understanding this is a post-apocalyptic book, but the series, the Yldrbacian Chronicles, that series runs from the beginning of time to the rise and fall of man, all the way to the final end of it. Where we return to paradise. Now, Return to Paradise is the story that is the volume I'm working on now. Now, to sort of bring you up to speed, in The Birth of the Wolf Pack, there's a group of people called the Wolf Pack. And I didn't show because I didn't have the right one. In The Birth of the Wolf Pack, the back cover has, actually, I think I did show at some point, has a back cover collage like this. Now, this is Jeremiah. You have Wilhelm Schunter, and you have Tanya Jan Scott. Each of these characters were built by other gamers. Now, take that. This one, if you look at the back of it, this has two more members of the Wolf Pack. We have Dirk Waterstone and Blade. Now, again, these guys were built by other gamers. So, in order to not read the spoiler for the Birth of the Wolf Pack, I'm picking this one up. Instead of reading the first couple of chapters, I'm going to jump ahead, and I'm going to read. Oh, yeah, we're not going to quite get started yet. I'm going to jump ahead with it, and I'm going to start by reading chapter 4. So you don't know how the Birth of the Wolf Pack ends. The reason for that, like I said, I don't want to give you a spoiler alert at this point. I'd love to say that the books are written, that they are just accidental coincidences, but I have to lie. Most of the characters in the books are either built for gaming systems, not necessarily Dungeons and Dragons. There were other gaming systems we were playing as well, which was things like Aftermath, Space Opera, Star Frontiers. Some of you, because of the fact I'm a gamer, I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons roughly twice a week since 1976. In all fairness, I didn't even miss my game on New Year's Eve in 2018 when I had a major, what I called a major stroke. Couldn't walk, couldn't talk, ended up in the hospital. I was still out in time to make my game, to make my game on the on the 31st, on New Year's Eve. Now, what I've done with this is this started as a story written way back I wrote the storyline back in grade 10. I was about 15. It's just taken me this long to put it to print. And now I'm having all sorts of fun with trying to get things done because I made some serious mistakes with the companies I was working with, and they have completely shafted me, and now I'm trying to figure out how to get around it. But that said, I'm going to continue writing. Okay. Now, the next month here, I'm going to be, because I read a chapter roughly out of it on the Sunday. I don't know what I'm going to do in May. Sorry. In May. But the next month, I'm going to be working with this one. Okay. Now, I did say, because of the fact, I know I'm on a little early. Okay, I wasn't really planning on it, but hey, what the heck? So, I've got that side of it. And we certainly have, I can see in my chat room here, there is one person in the wings waiting for the show to start. Okay. No, I don't have a huge following yet. And the reality of it is, I'm on live feed from Friday through Wednesday most of the time. Most of the time from 4:30, most days from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. PST. Okay. So at this point, I'm looking at, let's get that up and running. It's already off. Okay. Well, don't need that. Okay. We are sitting, just to bring you up to speed, we are sitting at 479 subscribers. Now, the reality of it for me is this. If you like the stream, because I am looking at hopefully before the end of this year, hitting 1,000 subscribers. Okay, and the reason for that, frankly, is because it's another source of income. Okay, we are at 479 and we are only into April, so do we have room to work? The answer is yes. That said, if you like the stream, do give us a thumbs up. Do subscribe to the channel if you'd be so kind. Okay, and then share the daylights out of it. Now, there are a number of people that have their own YouTube channels that come in. Okay, and I do my best to give them a shout out as well. Because the reality of it is that as long as we work together, there's 8 billion plus people on the planet. Okay, not to mention the animals and the plants. And frankly, from my perspective, with that many people, there's enough different viewpoints for us to share them, as it were. Okay. Now, the only thing I do request, when I start reading this in a couple of minutes, I won't be looking at the chat room to start with. Okay. I do that after I get finished the reading. And then if you've got questions, absolutely, because I'll go back through the chat room and I will see who's come in. And if you've got questions, if you would be so kind as to literally write them in all caps. This is not a way of yelling at me. This is a way of simply waving your hand and letting me know. Letting me know that you're there. Now, with that in mind, bearing in mind we are hitting 7:30 here. Okay, I'm going to miss the introduction, the prologue, as well as the first couple of chapters here, because they feed directly off the way the Birth of the Wolf Pack ends. Okay, and we are going to start reading. I'm going to start reading on with partway through the book, and then carry on from there. Now, bear in mind, I only read a few chapters, but the story itself has, how many is at the end? The end of an epic actually has 32 chapters in it. Okay. So, with that in mind, people, okay, I'm going to say thank you very much for joining me ahead of time because I won't be looking at the chat room until afterwards. But I'm going to start with chapter 4. So, now, at this point, things have happened. The wolf pack has all come together. They're all working together, etc. Okay, a lot of that gets covered in the birth of the wolf pack. Okay, but there are a lot of flashbacks and a lot of foreshadowings throughout the series. Okay, so here we have chapter 4, Salvage Gone Awry. The sound of wood scraping on wood surprisingly brought Jeremiah out of a deep sleep with a start. Silently extricating himself from his bedroll, he came to his feet, bluish black silver katana in hand, and peered into the shadows, seeking any sign of where the noise had originated from. Seeing nothing in the immediate vicinity, he slipped back into his tent and withdrew a set of infrared, infrared goggles from his backpack and returned once again to continue his search. There at the edge of the clearing, just to the north of their campsite, he saw it. Movement of a number of people clearly striving to remain fully concealed, yet quietly picking up stuff as they worked their way ever so carefully through the salvage pile of the remains of Ground Zero Trading and Lounge. Disappearing into the shadows, Jeremiah made his way to the first bivouac and, hissing into the darkness, woke Blade, who instinctively drew his bowie knife and thus was immediately combat ready. Company, Jeremiah whispered. Northwest boundary. Check, responded Blade, rising to his feet like a ghost from its grave. Rouse the others, I'm gone. With that, he all but vanished from his bedroll and his personal mission of preservation and potential retaliation, while Jeremiah continued on his own self-appointed path. Quickly, yet soundlessly making his way around the camp, Jeremiah awakened the rest of the wolf pack and prepared for the battle that was certain to come, especially considering they were the ones that were starting it. Seemingly materializing out of nowhere, right behind the first of the invaders, Blade pulled his victim's head far to the left while covering his mouth to ensure a silent demise. Drawing his razor-sharp blade neatly across the target's throat, he cut deep into the voice box, nearly decapitating his prey. As the victim's legs buckled, he caught the full weight of the corpse to ensure it did not make any undue noise during its untimely passing. As silent as the shadows that now surrounded him, Blade proceeded along his murderous, interceptive course of retribution. There in the gloom before him, he could see his next target, the silhouette of a figure crouching in the shadows, apparently securing some sort of rolled-up package for transport. Gliding up to the form like horrific tendrils of vaporous death, he reached over the shoulder of his target, grabbing him by the mouth and nose with his left hand, and pulling his victim over backwards directly onto the ready, yet already blood-soaked bowie knife in his right hand. As the blade entered the back of the man's heart, Blade could feel its whole form go rigid and then limp in a satisfactory completion of effort that few ever get to experience, and thankfully fewer still come to enjoy. Setting the invader's now lifeless body noiselessly to the ground, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving the would-be stolen cargo behind while seeking out the rest of the problem children whom had clearly invaded his temporary home. In the very near future, his quarry would come to understand just how bad of a decision they had made, though they surely would not live to ponder their choice for long, if Blade had any functional influence over it. Arriving at Tanya's lean-to first, Jeremiah whistled quietly to catch her attention. Sensing the need to be silent more than understanding it, Tanya opened her left eye to take in what was currently happening. whilst not moving a muscle aside from a very discreet tightening grip on her machete, which was lying just underneath her pillow. "Company, Tanya, and not the good kind," Jeremiah informed her in a hushed voice, as he turned and moved on. Soundlessly exiting her bedroll, Tanya headed for the storage site, feeling that would be the first place for anyone to hit. Ozzy's trained ear heard Tanya begin to move in an unnatural fashion. Rolling out of his tent to her right, he softly announced, "I've got your six, Tanya." Reaching Dirk's tent, Jeremiah was witness to a rather intriguing display. Dirk was kneeling in the middle of his sleeping quarters, naked but for his shorts, though apparently asleep, as he was not moving at all, not even a little. Walking down the street late one night, having snuck out of the house once again to hang with his creative computer friends, Dirk was suddenly pulled sideways into a very dark and foreboding alley and back against the wall. At age 16, Dirk had... Oh, my apologies, people. This part here, starting with walking down the street, and I'll read over that again. This is a flashback. This happens earlier on. Walking down the street late one night, having snuck out of the house once again to hang with his creative computer friends, Dirk was suddenly pulled sideways into a very dark and foreboding alley and backed against the wall. At age 16, Dirk still had never learned to physically defend himself. His father had made it clear that Waterstones did not engage in any such barbaric practices, as that was what the hired help was paid handsomely for. "Well, well, boys," began the clear leader of the group of six, "I do believe we hit the jackpot." "Who'd you snag this time, Rex?" asked the long-legged, dark-haired vixen as she stepped out of the shadows to bear down upon both of them. "None other than the Waterston boy himself, Joe," Rex replied with a smirk on his face. "Well, isn't that a shame, boys and girl? Bring him along. We're going to party tonight, 'cause tomorrow is payday," Joe cackled. No one saw the first strike coming. Joe was driven off her feet, her mouth spitting blood and teeth as her cheek was torn open with the force of the impact. Before she even hit the ground, the crunch could be heard down the alley as the knee of the nearest demonkin, the local street gang, was forced brutally sideways, dropping him to the ground with a crash. Looking around as a deer caught in headlights, the next volley of bone-shattering blows struck the other demon's kin with brutal finality. Catching Dirk's captor by the wrist, Mark Mackenzie drove his massive fist into the side of into the inside of his shoulder as he came to his full height of 6'6" of unrestricted power, driving the shoulder completely out of its socket whilst tearing the muscle and sinew as he spun backwards in front of the stunned Dirk. Forcing his left elbow through the rib cage and into the chest cavity of the demonskin, holding Dirk's other arm. The remaining demonskin barely saw the impact and only distantly felt it as Mark drew a bowie knife from his left hip and buried it to the hilt in the demonskin's chest, splitting the sternum in two as he raced past him and down the alley in pursuit of the fleeing demonskin. As Joe, the first demonskin, broke from the alley in a dead run, she leapt into the air to slide feet first across the hood of a passing police cruiser, her long brunette ponytail flowing out behind her. Reacting with the speed of 20 years on the force, the officer locked the brakes, instantly stopping the car just as the second demonskin leapt into the air to plant both of her hands on the roof and vault over the cruiser, in true parkour fashion, with both her legs slipping between her own arms. As the officer slipped deftly into the street, he caught Mark by the leading left arm and, smashing him hard down on the trunk of the patrol car, immobilized him. With amazing fluidity, the officer and his partner loaded Mark into the back of their car as they read him his rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you can say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you. You have the right to an attorney present during all questioning. Do you understand? Since Mark had been down this familiar path multiple times in his life already, he responded calmly with no trace of emotion. Yes. Moments later, several more police units and ambulances arrived on the site. Dirk, still in shock, was standing motionless when a tall, slender officer with gray hair approached him in the alley, where he had been left unattended. Come with me, Master Waterstone. I will see to it you get home safely, the officer assured Dirk as he led him past the patrol car. Meanwhile, Mark, the juvenile delinquent with a record as long as his arm, was taken down to the precinct and charged with disturbing the peace, aggravated assault, and murder, amongst other things. Perhaps surprisingly to some, the one thing that Mark was not charged with was resisting arrest. Back home, Dirk pleaded with his father to help Mark, for he had saved his life. To this end, Leon Waterstone had gone down to the station to see what could be done. While his father was away, Dirk rapidly went to work, breezing through the security on the police computer and eliminating all reference to Mark's participation in the events of that night, professionally constructing and inserting a few additional notes, explaining the physical evidence in addition to setting a well-concealed, expertly constructed virus to take care of any new evidence that may arrive. With his mission accomplished, Dirk continued to work his current form of magic, and as an added favor, he wiped out Mark's prior records as well, juvenile and all. Mark was subsequently released, and all charges were dropped due to lack of evidence against him and an overabundance of evidence dealing prior criminal activity perpetrated by the Demon's Kin. Thus began a friendship that would last through the ages. Then we go back to the current side of things. Back to present day. Dirk, we have to go, stated Jeremiah under his breath. In less than a heartbeat, though not entirely awake, Dirk was on his feet with an ancient, mint-condition war dagger from long before the age of man in hand. Looking Jeremiah dead in the eye. Situation, Major? Dirk asked. Unwelcome company. Tanya and Ozzy are heading for stores. Blade has perimeter. I'm roasting Mickey, and Wilhelm next, Jeremiah said while flatly ignoring the greeting. I'll grab Mickey for perimeter support. You deal with Wilhelm, responded Dirk, as he rolled out the back of his lean-to. Turning his attention to the last of the wolf pack, Jeremiah arrived at Wilhelm's resting spot. Looking inside, nothing. No one home. Jeremiah paused for only a moment before spotting the tip of Wilhelm's combat boots sticking out from the far end of the makeshift tent. Moving silently into the night, Dirk stopped at Mickey's tent to whisper, Mickey, perimeter, now. Mickey quickly came to his feet and fell in step with Dirk, splitting off from each other to cover more ground. Dirk was the first to arrive, stealthily coming up behind and between the first two of the trio of invaders clustered together. Dirk reached around the man on his right to grasp his trachea firmly, thus removing it with a quick flick of the wrist. Simultaneously dropping the trachea, Dirk lashed out with his left hand, performing a perfect knife strike to his second target, and instantly severing the spinal column at the cerebral cortex whilst retrieving his target's windpipe. With blood pouring profusely from both victims as they slumped to the ground in lifeless heaps, Dirk casually exited the bush between the victims. In 2 measured strides, he stepped up between a third of the invaders and, draping his right arm, asked, "Do we really have to go through with this?" Without warning, the invader's legs buckled, dropping him straight to the ground in an unconscious pile. "Guess not," Dirk concluded in his mind. Crouching down, he quickly bound and gagged the invader. At the same time, Mickey reached his target, grabbing one side of a small bundle that was currently being lifted from the ground. He hauled the carrier off balance to stumble towards him. As the man came within striking distance, Mickey used his right leg to snap kick the target in the groin, causing him to double over, throwing up, thus dropping his package. Immediately flipping the bundle over onto his own left shoulder, Mickey caught the former owner of the bundle in a vicious elbow smash to the left temple, knocking him instantly unconscious. Pausing momentarily, Mickey grabbed the man by the collar and hauled him back to camp, leaving Blade to continue on his path. Coming noiselessly around the corner of the tent, Jeremiah could see the end of Wilhelm's DSR-50 sniper's rifle, already pointing in the direction, pointing out into the darkness. Just as he went to get Wilhelm's attention, the side of the rifle spit out a casing onto the ground in front of him. Unseen by Jeremiah, the target of the shot suddenly collapsed. His spine severed as the bullet sheared through the side of his throat, taking out the spinal column en route. "Morning, Jeremiah," Wilhelm greeted in a heavy, high German accented whisper. "I trust you're here to tell me we have unwelcome company." "True," replied Jeremiah, quietly chuckling through the response. "Clearly you have things in hand." "Yes, I'm on it," confirmed Wilhelm, shifting targets now. "By the way, survivors have been captured from the southern perimeter." "Thanks, Wilhelm," responded Jeremiah. "I'm gone." With that, Jeremiah set out into the night, heading on intercept course for the newly identified situation. After releasing one more round, neatly removing the left eye of his target and decimating the back of its skull, Wilhelm followed close behind Jeremiah. In virtually no time at all, the wolf pack was mobile and moving about the shadows, picking their targets almost without communicating with each other, yet seemingly knowing what their companions were doing without asking, and trusting each other to do their job well. Arriving at the storage pile just ahead of Ozzy, Tanya let her machete fly with deadly results as the blade pierced the back of the thief's heart to stick out of the front of his lightly armored chest. Tanya broke to the left to brutally drive another target face first into the ground as she flew past him, grabbing him in a headlock. With a vicious snap, the would-be thief lay still as Tanya rolled to her feet to continue on her way. Pausing for only a moment to check for the non-existent pulse in Tanya's latest victim, Ozzy silently raced after her into the tree line, thus closing on yet another bearer of stolen goods. Firing from the hip, he severed the femoral artery of the thief in front of him as the .460 Magnum round tore mercilessly through muscle, sinew, and bone, causing his target to crash to the ground and scatter his load as the blood from his leg gushed forth like a gruesome geyser. Traveling to the edge of the perimeter, Blade continued to hunt for problem children. Suddenly, from off to the left, 4 scavengers rushed forward. Instinctively, Blade lashed out, grabbing the first target in a fierce bear hug and turning it into a savage rolling suplex, letting his full weight crash down upon his victim and subsequently snapping his spine. As the assailant twitched his last, Blade flipped the knife sideways into the throat of the second victim. Rolling back to his feet, Blade was quick to release 2 more jerks into the abdomen of 2 more targets, dropping them in their tracks to rapidly bleed out. One by one, the invaders fell to the blades and bullets of the wolf pack, leaving naught but the carcasses to tell of their passing. Realizing how badly outnumbered they seemed to be, the remaining invaders did their best to vanish back into the bush from whence they had recently emerged, taking with them the supplies and a number of unconscious prisoners they had managed to capture before they had been discovered. "Wilhelm, break 3. I've got your 6, Jeremiah called out in a muffled voice as he caught the glimpse of a small cadre of invaders disappearing into the tree line in the darkness. Instinctively, Wilhelm raced from where he was currently traveling to follow the path he was just handed, as he fell into stride in front of Jeremiah, keeping low and relatively out of sight. With the sound of retreating footsteps guiding them along, they ran after their captured brethren, and Wilhelm taking one shot after the next, dropping one captor at a time. Abruptly, there was a great explosion, causing a virtual inferno to block the path. With heat intense enough to melt the stone next to it, Jeremiah and Wilhelm had no choice but to let the raiders escape into the night with their stolen goods and captives. With a final shot, Wilhelm struck one of the remaining visible assailants, directly in the small of the back, dropping him in his tracks, yet intentionally leaving him alive. Concurrently, Jeremiah sped off to circle the wall of fire. Picking his way through the heavy underbrush, finding a less intense section, he leapt bravely through the flames to get to the other side. As he approached the fallen invader, he could tell the young dark-haired man was still intent on escaping, despite the fact his legs no longer worked. Arriving at the man's side, Jeremiah rapidly worked to stop the bleeding. He then bound and hauled him to his feet, and to drag him back to what remained of Ground Zero Trading Lounge. And that is where I am going to end this particular read, primarily because that's the end of the chapter. Okay. Now, I do apologize in a sense. My reading is not very good. I will end up getting these done professionally in an audio version eventually. But for the moment, that's not happening. Okay. But I do see we have, we do have a few people listening in. The fact that I don't have questions in the chat room, I'm going to thank you so much for joining me. And especially, in addition to that, the people that listen to this later, thank you so much for listening. And, we will meet again. I'm usually on the air from between 4:30 and 6:30 p.m. Pacific time every Friday to all the way through to Wednesday. Okay. So until then, do take care of yourself. I'm going to call this a night. So do take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's sakes, stay positive.